excited to be here with you guys, and we are going to have some fun, and we're here to celebrate the dropping of Marvel Voices Comunidad. So exciting. I'm Frederick Luis Aldama, otherwise known as Professor Latinx. I teach and publish on all things Latinx comics.
And I am Sam Ceballos. I am a PhD student at the University of Texas at Austin, and I study all things Latinx popular culture.
Hi, I'm Terry Blas. I'm an author and illustrator. I wrote the Reptile miniseries for Marvel, a short in Marvel Voices Pride, and a short in Marvel Voices Comunidades.
Hello, I'm Enid Balám. I'm a Mexican artist, and I'm actually a penciler for Marvel and Titan Comics.
Hey everyone, I'm Julio Anta. I am a writer of Home, a graphic novel from Image Comics, and I wrote a short in Marvel Voices Comunidades.
Welcome everybody. I'm so excited to have you here. This is so awesome, and yay. Yeah, I know it's Sunday night, but man, anyway, we are so excited. We're excited that it's in bookstores. People are going to have this in their hands. Let me lead with asking the question, what superhero were you able to celebrate and complicate? Let's start with Terry.
I'm assuming you mean in this book.
In this book, yes, yes.
I felt very lucky that I was able to write a short about Eva Quintero, who is the cousin of Reptile, and she's somebody that I created for the Reptile miniseries. It was really fun to write a story for her that expanded on her character, and I think that it's interesting how you mentioned how to complicate, or what was complicated about that, because I wanted to make sure she was like a fully formed, rounded character that people could get excited about and interested in. She does magic, so my idea was that she would prepare to go to Strange Academy and then get into like a little bit of an adventure with another Mexican student who goes to Strange Academy. So that's what I was able to do, and I think it's fun. So she got a cool new costume, obviously designed by her twin brother, Julian, who does that. Yeah, that's what I was able to do.
Love it. I love it. Enid, how about you?
Well, as a matter of fact, I had the pleasure to draw for both Terry and Julio Anta's stories. On Comunidades, we got Latinx and Proud, written by Julio Anta. And I'm going to center on perhaps the technical aspect of it. So I will leave Julio to expand. I think most difficult thing to address on this story was that it's well balanced, because at first we have some action, and then it reaches a point where there is a conversation between the main characters. So drawing conversations is kind of difficult, because you have to make the characters act, and especially to engage with the reader, not to make the pages too obvious or boring. So it has to show some sort of soul between the relations of how they look to each other, how their bodies move, how they engage in a well, in this case, a very important topic. So I think that was the hard part of it. But as it was hard, it also was a delight, because it was such an opportunity for me as an artist to tackle this story. And I think it was so wonderful to get to know these fantastic Puerto Rican characters, which are Miles Morales and Anya Corazon. So I would leave it at that and pass it to Julio.
Yeah. I was super honored when I learned that Enid was going to be doing my short story, because I just love the work that he did with Terry on Reptile. So it felt great to know that we'd be working together. And we got to work, like he said, on a story about Miles Morales and Anya Corazon, which for me kind of felt like full circle, because Anya Corazon is really the first Latinx character that I ever saw in mainstream Marvel comics. It was right around the time that I got into, Marvel and DC comics, because I'd mostly been into manga at the time. And then one day I went into an anime store and they had these North American comics also. And one of the issues, I think it was Amazing Fantasy #3, which was probably her third appearance, I guess. And I love that character, and it took a while to find the earlier issues, because back then it was not as easy as it is now. So I was super honored to have the opportunity to write Anya and to write Miles, who is one of my favorite Marvel characters right now, one of my favorite superhero characters in general, and who's making these huge waves, just like representing, Latinx culture, Black culture in all these different mediums right now. He's having this moment in video games and movies and TV. So I was super happy for when the editor said that I could use him for this story, especially a story, like Enid said, about a pretty, I think important conversation, a conversation that is probably happening within our families a lot right now, which is around the term Latinx. And it's, it's an intergenerational conversation between Anya and Miles, really having a thoughtful explanation with Rio, Miles's mother, that really is free from all of the negativity associated with it. And they can just speak freely and answer honest questions about what that term means and why people have desired more inclusive language. So I've said it a few times, but it was just an honor for me to work on this.
So amazing. So amazing. You guys are amazing. Sam, I'm going to hand it to you.
So what makes you most excited about this issue dropping? I'll start with Terry.
Okay. I didn't want to jump in. I talk about it a lot in interviews and in podcasts and whatnot. But what is exciting for me is that Ava not only has a story, but that she's also on one of the variant covers, like solo by herself. And that's important because one of the fastest growing demographics in the United States is the college-educated Latina. And so when there are so many smart, young, intelligent Latinas who I don't think are represented as much as other people in comics and in movies and in shows, then that makes me really excited, because I feel like anything that can help a young Latina find herself in comics easier, I think is so great. Anya is also one of my favorite characters. It was so exciting to see that story and to see her interact with Miles. I came across Anya, a long time ago, but also in my reptile research, and I was happy that they interacted together. So that's what makes me really excited. In some of my research, I came across a quote by Frida Kahlo where she said, "I'm just as strange as you." And I thought that was so interesting, and that's the title of my story, because it fit to me so well, where she's trying to learn magic just like anybody else, and then she's going to go to Strange Academy to do it. It was a quote that made me feel like young women could see themselves and be represented in a cool way. So that's what makes me most excited, I think.
I'll just say, for me, it's my first Marvel work, so that just like straight off the bat is super exciting for me. But to also, kind of piggyback off of what Terry said, I rarely saw myself in these comics, and like I said, it was such a big thing for me to discover Anya when I did, as like the first Latinx character that I ever saw in mainstream comics. So for me, I think books like this are super important. I think people like us telling these stories about these characters in just really, uplifting and positive ways. That's what makes me so excited. I don't remember how many, but there's like 15 stories in this book featuring all of these amazing Latinx characters and creators. So to me, that's super exciting.
I'm gonna point that my favorite part of this book, or most enjoyable part, was working with editors Sarah Brunstad and Lauren Amaro, which are the foundation stones of this book. And it was such a pleasure because they are super professional in the fact that they make like this round table where I often imagine myself in a chair, and they are very welcoming as well, always checking everything on the books to be as perfect as possible. So their ambition becomes very contagious. You tend to try to do an extra effort because you see what they are working for. So I think it is a book that is constructed from a very intellectual place, but as well something with a lot of soul, something with a lot of effort. And I can only be thankful, and also point their amazing job, and as well, as Julio said, the amazing talents that participate in this book. I was just astonished to see like the variety of styles and the ambitious pages. It wasn't taken. I don't know if others felt it, but I was thinking of some sort of a duty, some sort of, I have to do this, I have to represent, I have to bring the best to the game because it is something important.
Yeah, beautiful. All of that so beautifully articulated, and how both kind of representation not only matters, but it's bringing us together here. It's brought us together in this issue, and of course working together, creating community, right? So it's like magic. The whole thing was magic, right? Some of them are really short form, some are a little bit longer, but they're basically short form comics. Enid, let me start with you, and then we can work to Terry and Julio. But did you find this, were there surprises positive in the challenge of working in this short form?
Well, I've done it in the past, and I think the most relevant thing is maybe think of these stories making a parallel to maybe short, is it named shortcuts? Yeah, shorts of like film style shorts. They always tend to have a surprising element to them, where like the story makes sense if it's maybe located at the end, it's maybe in the middle, but it has that tendency to surprise, to make something of you to react. And in this case, Julio's story, well, it was actually, I was thinking all the time, I wish my mother could listen to me like real. I was feeling envious of the character because it was such a loving mother, and like changing her own thoughts, changing her meaning through her children. So I think that is most powerful element of this story. Trying to illustrate it, it was difficult, but maybe trying to reflect on my own story, it was the most interesting for me. I don't know if it makes sense, but I was like mirroring my own story.
Yeah, beautiful. Terry?
I always find it challenging to write a short story because I think I'm a very wordy person. I'm always chopping dialogue up until the last minute. But I think that it's always really good to attempt to do shorts, especially if you're someone who's new to comics and wanting to make comics. I mentor students at the college that I went to for their independent studies and their thesis projects. And I'm always trying to get them to start with shorter stories because I think that it's a good foundation and a good building block to be able to make longer stories. I think when we're young and we want to make comics, we're like, oh, I have this epic in my head, and there's like 10 races of elves and 15 languages, and there's this map, and it's like, but what's the story? And so I think that when I wrote my first book, I couldn't conceive of 160 pages in my head. I couldn't see what that looked like, and I had to break it into shorter chunks and say, okay, I have to make it chapters now, and I can view, like I could draw 10 rectangles on a sheet of paper and say, oh, now I see how much space I have, which will require like what information, to go along with it. So I think that I always enjoy writing short things because I like the challenge. Someone who has like a one-pager in this is gonna kill me because I think I have a longer story. But yeah, I enjoy doing it quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I started writing comics as mini comics with shorts. And like everything that Terry just said is like feels so relevant to me, because when I was trying to start as a comic book writer, the advice that I would always see pros saying, just like across the board, was to not start with your big epic project, to do 4 to 10 page short comics. And that's what I did, before my first published issue of anything was out. I just put online 5 4 to 10 page mini comics just for free online. And it was really an education for me in how to, show more and say less, and also get into the story as close to the end as possible. So, since I started with mini comics, I haven't really done many of them since, or I haven't done any of them recently. So doing this was kind of like a re-education in that. But it was also difficult because, like Enid said, our story was it's pretty much a conversation. It's 6 pages. 4 of them are just 3 characters sitting at a table talking. So, a lot of what you see in the panels is all from Enid, kind of like figuring out interesting ways to like make the characters come alive and act. But it was also about like trying to find the transitions between pages, so that it didn't just feel like these long blocks of word balloons, and that it made people want to turn the page. So, all of that felt natural to me in a way, but also kind of like far away, and like I had to relearn it again. But it was a really fun process overall.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Everything is so beautifully done and written. This issue is just so amazing. And at the end, there's a mention of the food that's been incorporated throughout the comic. So I was wondering if you all could talk about some of the other rituals that you and your family go through to come together. I don't know if Enid, you want to start?
Yeah, my wife loves to bake, so she's half Spanish, half Mexican. So I'm a lucky guy because when holidays come into place, I'm always trying new things and very exquisite bakery desserts. So we have constructed our own traditions. So I would just really stick to the saying that I'm a lucky guy.
I mean, for me, I think like for a lot of Latinos, Noche Buena is like a huge thing. So that's like what I have in my mind coming up. And like growing up in Miami, like, we'd have like the lechon in like the big box that everybody would just like make in the backyard. The whole family would come over. Now I live in New York, and like kind of like this family that, my wife, my son, and also like this family that we've created with all of our friends. We go out to a Cuban restaurant on Noche Buena and try to like replicate, that life that we're all from Miami, this whole group of friends anyway. So, it's nice. And that's the first thing that comes to mind for me, at least.
I think that when I get together with my family or my parents, I'm sort of at the age now where I am asking them a lot of questions about their parents, their grandparents, and that seems to be a tradition that now has started at least between me and my mom. And we just got together several weeks ago, and I learned so much stuff about, you know, I guess my great grandmother that I never knew. And so I sort of enjoy that. We just sit around and have food and drink tea. And that's one of our traditions. My parents and I don't share the similar religious beliefs, so we don't necessarily get together and do things like that. But that's been my favorite thing recently, is being able to, I think, connect more and learn more about my own heritage before I feel like I don't have the chance to do that. So yeah, that's sort of my new tradition with my family.
Wonderful. As we wrap this up, I want to just say to all of you, Julio, Terry, Enid, thank you for coming together to create community, comunidad, right now, and working together to make this incredible, what I think of as a landmark, absolutely sublime anthology comic. It's the thing that I had always been wanting, and it's here now. So yeah, for future generations, for us. And by coming together, celebrating what we've been able to do, what you all have worked so hard to do with Marvel Voices, Comunidades. Thank you. And what a celebration that needs to happen now and when everybody's got their hands on this.
Thank you so much for having us and hosting us.
I am so excited. We have Alex, and we have all of these people celebrating the dropping of Marvel Voices, Comunidades. Super happy. I'm Frederick Luis Aldama, otherwise known as Professor Latinx. I teach and write and publish on all things Latinx comics.
And I'm Sam Ceballos. I'm a PhD student at the University of Texas at Austin, and I research all things dealing with Latinx popular culture.
And I'm Alex Segura. I'm a writer of comics, novels, short stories, podcasts, and more. And I'm really excited to be here.
So wonderful that we're here together. What superhero, Alex, were you able to celebrate and complicate in this issue?
I had the honor and pleasure of writing a Sunspot short story, Roberto da Costa, of the New Mutants and the Avengers and X-Force and many other exciting teams and stories. So that was amazing.
So what makes you most excited about this issue dropping?
I love that it brings together so many talented people and so many characters, that some that are very well known, others that are a little less recognized, but I think the pairings are really smart. There are a lot of great stories and so many talents that you don't immediately connect with Marvel, this is my first Marvel story, which is a huge honor. I grew up as a Marvel kid. Spider-Man, the X-Men, all those characters were so iconic to me as growing up. And for me, Sunspot was hugely important because I could see, though we're not exactly the same in terms of our background, I'm Cuban American, I could at least see someone like me. And I think that is of great value to readers everywhere. It definitely influences a lot of what I do in my fiction, my prose, and in my other comics work. Most of my comic book characters that are my creations are Cuban American, and they have similar traits to me because I can't really put into words how important it was to see that. And or characters like Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, characters that just felt like they were a little bit closer to you than more traditional superheroes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Representation matters. And
totally.
Boy, does this issue, like, we have it in spades, don't we?
Mm-hmm. It's an amazing lineup, and it's so many. I'm so honored that so many of them are people I've had the pleasure of knowing and calling friends, like Daniel Jose Older and Terry, and a lot of the people that were just in the chat, but just super talented people that are getting a chance to shine. And each story feels so special and unique in its own way, which is great.
Yeah, I love it. It's gonna be. I don't know how I can preserve it for the like next 20 centuries or whatever, but it's definitely pretty amazing. It's
Yeah.
a landmark. It's really incredible. So for you, what were some of the challenges and surprises working with such a short form comic?
You know, it's interesting because I've written a lot of short stories, like prose stories, and those are always challenging because with a novel, you have all the room in the world. You want to do like 20 chapters of a detour. I don't know if anyone will read it, but you can do it, and it'll be a novel, and it's still a novel. With a short story, you have at most 5,000 words, 10,000 words, and then you're kind of inching into novella territory. And so it's a vignette. It's a snapshot of a moment. It's a peek into the world with hints of the narrative. And so in comics, it's even more challenging because the word count goes down significantly. Like I'm always of the mind that you let the artist direct the movie, and you are the screenwriter, and together you kind of make this comic. And so I want the artist to feel like they, in this case, Alba Glez, who was amazing. I'd never worked with her before, but she was so talented, and the look she gave the story was without spoiling too much, it ties in very closely to Sunspot's origin. It brings some level of closure to that story that we see in the Marvel graphic novel #4 when the New Mutants first appear, and she made it feel both modern, but also it resonated with the history that I wanted it to feel. And so you don't want an artist to feel like they're cramped by word balloons or captions, and so you want to let the art breathe, and that's the challenge. So the word count goes down, and I had to really get action, intrigue, interpersonal conflict into 6 pages. And originally the story was 5, and so when I got that extra page, it was almost like a huge sigh of relief. I was like, okay, I can let this breathe and like maybe move this fight scene into like, to let it kind of spread out a little bit. But Marvel editorial was great. They gave some fantastic notes, and it felt very collaborative and fun.
That's awesome. This issue is just so beautifully drawn and written. And at the end, there's this mention of the food and how it was incorporated into the comics. So I'm wondering, what other rituals bring you and your family and friends together?
Family, it's with my parents. It was always with my dad. It was sports. We'd sit and watch sports together. I grew up in Miami, and for better or worse, we were Dolphins fans and Heat fans and Marlins fans, and so it's always food. A lot of it is food. Like Noche Buena was always a bigger holiday for us than Christmas. So as we got more Americanized, you start to realize that Christmas is the big holiday, but for us, it's always Noche Buena, having that meal with family, and that was like the family event before the Christmas like kind of commercialized version. But yeah, sitting around the table, playing dominoes, just talking, playing, a lot of card playing, and I just remember a lot of times sitting around the table and just talking after the meal and just sharing ideas. And that sense of love is really hard to explain, but it's always around the table, always around some kind of meal, dessert, some beverage. Those are the memories that kind of resonate with me.
Yeah,
I don't know
likewise.
if that fully answered your question, but
yeah, absolutely. It's like hours and hours, right? And it's
just
epic.
like shooting the breeze.
Yeah, epic storytelling that happens.
It really is. Yeah, I mean, it's different now. I have 2 little kids, and it's all about managing bedtimes and making sure we don't have that luxury of time anymore. But when my parents call, I feel like I'm back there, and we're just kind of chatting and just sharing these stories. And I miss that, as the older generations fade away, your grandparents die and your great aunts die. It becomes, you lose a layer of that, but you can still think about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we're making community here. We're making rituals in different ways for your children and for our kids, right?
Yeah.
Gosh, Alex, thank you for bringing the gift of your storytelling, for bringing us all together to celebrate Marvel Voices.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.